A good Tuesday, everybody, and welcome into the It's Official podcast. Jeff Siegel and Jeremy Plonk representing Express Bet and First Bet. And can you feel it, folks? Can you feel it? 8 days away from pre-entries being announced for the Breeders' Cup. 13 days from now, they will enter the fields for the 40th Breeders' Cup Championships at Santa Anita. Jeff Siegel, it's in your backyard. You got to feel it in your bones.
I feel it. I was at the track Sunday to do the simulcast handicapping show, and it's everywhere. All the signages are up, and the horses are working out every day. I mean, every day you've got something to watch. Mm-hmm. We watched a few very important workouts in the last few days. We'll talk about that later in the show, but it's fun. And again, now it's just a matter of hoping that everybody gets there in one piece, and we might even pick up a euro or two because of Champions Day this Saturday will be run on a bog, and I think you're going to see a lot of them back out, maybe change plans. We'll wait until the weekend to find out who they may be, but it is exciting, and I can't wait, and it's going to be a fun 2 weeks.
Are you saying we're doing a rain dance for England, or is that what it's coming to?
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, I want a flooding over there, because we could use some of their good stock out here and make our show a little bit better. There's still going to be plenty of them to show up, but you never know who might have a change of plans.
Put them on the Ark 2x2 to Santa Anita right. On a direct route circumventing the globe. We have 5 topics on the big board each week on It's Official, and usually we're recapping a lot of key races, looking ahead to big things. It's no different. Even though we're this close to Breeders' Cup, we had some races with potential Breeders' Cup implications this past weekend. We still got some to come. We've got horses on the track working with XBTV cameras rolling on them each and every move out at Santa Anita, and that's part of what you're going to see on the big board this week. But first up, our first topic is the big race of last weekend, and it has Breeders' Cup implications. Maj, the winner of the Queen Elizabeth II Challenge Cup at Keeneland for Godolphin. What a meet for Godolphin they've had, even with the tough defeat by Master of the Seas by a nose by Up to the Mark last Saturday in the Grade 1 Coolmore Turf Mile. It's been a fabulous Godolphin run at Keeneland, and it continued last Saturday. Let's look at this brilliant 3-year-old filly in action, and Jeff will tell you what it all means.
3 lengths off the lead toward the outside. They turn for home, a quarter mile to go in the Queen Elizabeth II Challenge Cup presented by Dick Sienna. And here's Elusive Princess coming after Maj, and Mission of Joy tries to find room between that pair. Maj has the lead. Mission of Joy second, Elusive Princess third. Lindy is up to fourth and coming late. Maj still the leader. Mission of Joy, then Lindy. Maj, Lindy running on. Maj, Lindy trying. Here's the wire. Maj takes it by a neck for Oisin Murphy and Godolphin.
Jeff, we talked about handicapping that race, how the trends in the QE2 over the years was speed. So I thought maybe an American horse might have a shot up front, but the American speed scratched out. And Oisin Murphy must have been a viewer of our Friday podcast. He knew just go to the front.
Well, if you looked at her win in the 1,000 guineas, you knew she had speed. Mm-hmm. And I was happy to see that she was allowed to show it. I mean, sometimes they guzzle them and all that. And right. The fact that she was able to roll along probably clinched the race for her. If you look at the pure result of the race, it's obviously good. It's a Grade 1 race and all that. The margins weren't particularly lengthy. I mean, they all kind of came together at the end. And I think there may be a number of handicappers out there who are going to look at this race and kind of maybe feel, it was a good win, but I wasn't blown away, anything like that. I'm going to give you a different opinion. I was blown away because, trust me on this when I tell you, Maj is a fantastic race mare. She is so much better at a mile than she is at a mile and an eighth, especially off a layoff. And if you watch that race again, you'll see that while she was on the lead, she was into the bridle every step of the way. She wanted to kick on and blast out there. Right. Jock didn't let her do it, and she was still able to give you a second move and finish it out, going a mile and eighth. But she is much better when allowed to roll along and get turned loose. And it doesn't mean that she needs to lead the win, but it does mean that if they're going to go 22-1, 45-2, whatever it is on that pool top table of a grass course they're going to have at Santa Anita, she's going to be thrilled to death. And she will finish just as well going fast as she will going short, especially if they choose, which I think they will, to back her up to the mile as opposed to stretching her out to a mile and a quarter. And whatever you saw in that race, trust me, you will see a much better version of Maj going a mile on grass in the Breeders' Cup mile, if in fact she goes there. I loved the race, and I love this filly.
that seemed to be the lean versus going to the longer route race against the fillies and mares in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf. I'm with you. Back her up to the mile. That's what she does best. And we've seen 3-year-old fillies from Europe do exceptionally well at Santa Anita over the years in the Breeders' Cup Mile. Take on the boys. And there are no just killers in the American mile ranks. I think Up to the Mark's going to go into the turf. So if Up to the Mark goes to the turf, that leaves the mile a little more vulnerable from the American standpoint for sure, when the best miler in America is going to go long in the mile and a half. So there is nothing to fear there other than the other Europeans, and they know what quality she is winning the 1,000 guineas. I think she's an exceptional prospect for the Breeders' Cup Mile. I'm with you here, and I like this race a lot. We played a little sound in our Keeneland podcast that I do for the track last week at Tom Leach got from Tyler Gaffleone talking about the runner-up, Lindy, in that race. And Tom asked him, what did you think of Lindy's turn of foot at Kentucky Downs in the local allowance race? That was her first race in the U.S. And Tyler Gaffleone just lit up. He thought Lindy is like a locomotive with the turn of foot. And you could just tell in his reaction. He got that kind of run from Lindy. She really finished strong. This was a very good 1-2. The order in this race, these are two exceptional fillies. I don't know what they're going to do with Lindy, if she's going to go towards the Breeders' Cup or whatever their plans are, but she's going to be a very good 4-year-old filly next year. This was a top-class race, I thought. The best edition of the QE2 that I can remember. I've covered Keeneland now for 31 straight meets, 16, 17 of those being fall meets. I can never remember a QE2 as good as this one on paper going in. And I thought it lived up to all of that.
It certainly did. And as far as Lindy is concerned, my understanding is that she will come out here and run in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf at 1.25 miles. I think
that makes sense for her. With the way she finishes up, I think that's a good move.
And she was second in the French 1,000 guineas. It's not like she's a Johnny-come-lately. No. So that was an outstanding performance. Again, Maj. Now, a bit of news here, because we talked about it earlier on the top of the show about the rain on Champions Day. Inspiral cannot stand up on anything that's soft. And while John Gosden said that she would not run in both races, and he still wants to run her on Saturday on Champions Day, he won't run her if it is really, really soft. And the backup plan would be to bring her to Santa Anita, top of the ground, which she likes, in the Breeders' Cup Mile. So you might see a showdown between Spiral, who was a Group 1 winner at Deauville in her most recent start, high-class race filly, and then Maj. And I don't think the locals will have much look in that race if those two show up.
No, but bring that on. I mean, I would watch that twice on Saturday. I mean, that would be a great showdown. So we'll see what happens if Inspiral ends up here or not. But what we do know is Maj looked awfully tough at Keeneland at the 1 1/8, and that's not her best trip. So can't wait to see her back in a mile. To topic 2, we go this week, and we're talking about great Europeans. Are we seeing one of the all-time greats in the 2-year-old ranks right now? Maybe the next Frankel. Of course, you remember Frankel unbeaten and started off his 2010 rookie season with a big-time performance in the Dewhurst Stakes. Well, back in the Dewhurst this past weekend was City of Troy. The horse Aidan O'Brien says easily the best 2-year-old he's ever trained.
2 furlongs. City of Troy leads the way to Ebn Shahad, and the leader is beginning to open up. City of Troy, but being chased by Al Yanabi and by Iberian, running down to the final furlong. City of Troy by a couple of lengths. Al Yanabi into second, and Ebn Shahad now meeting the rising ground. And here's where he's impressive. He's pulling right away. Oh, a brilliant winner of the Dewhurst. City of Troy by 4 or 5 to Al Yanabi, Ebn Shahad, and Henry Adams.
The maiden win, the Group 2 win, and now a Grade 1, Group 1 winner, City of Troy. Jeff, we've got some American rooting interest with this one based on the pedigree, of course.
Well, of course, he's from the first crop of Justify. And the story not only is City of Troy, who unfortunately is too good to come over and run in the Breeders' Cup. I mean, you can win that race with your 3rd or 4th string. You're not going to take this cold out, and there's no reason to. Undefeated champion 2-year-old from the second crop of Justify. They talked about being the next Frankel. And Frankel was, by the way, the best European horse I've ever seen. Now, I never actually had a chance to watch him in person, but based on my evaluation of his form, he was the best I ever saw. They talked about Dancing Brave back in the 80s, and, See the Stars, and they were all outstanding for sure. But they were super horses. But from what I saw, Frankel was the best, and he's proven to be equally as talented as a stallion. But when you talk about City of Troy, who will probably show up next spring in the Guineas and then maybe try to make him a Epsom Derby winner, I'd love to see him come over and run on the dirt in the Kentucky Derby. And these guys are game, I think, would be game to do it. But I also think that they want to keep him in his element for as long as they can. Now, he might be the kind of horse they could bring over for the Breeders' Cup Classic, when he's done racing as a 3-year-old. I don't know. But I'd sure like to see him come over because he's by Justify. And he justifies an American-raced, American-bred horse, a Triple Crown winner. And he's also, I want to bring up this really quickly because I know sometimes breeding and pedigrees and bores people. I don't want to bore anybody, but this is the best young stallion we've had in the States, I think, at least the best Triple Crown winning stallion we've had since Seattle Slew. And just because you win a Triple Crown doesn't guarantee you're going to be that successful. And obviously, American Pharaoh was a Triple Crown winner. And people who bred to him were looking for American Pharaoh to duplicate himself, become a great American dirt stallion, classic producing type of stallion. And when they breed to him, all they've gotten are fillies who want to run on grass, completely the opposite of what he was. Whereas Justify is getting all kinds, fast horses, closers, dirt horses, turf horses, fillies, colts. He gets everything. And now that he's come up with a world-class superstar in City of Troy, I mean, he's going to go through the roof in terms of the stud fees and the sales and all that. He's already had 18 stakes winners. It's amazing to have 18 stakes winners with just 2 crops to race. The first crop, second crop's only halfway there, and that doesn't even count how many weanlings and yearlings and mares in full. I mean, the best is yet to come. This stallion now, again, is the most prolific young stallion I've seen in my lifetime, at least in Seattle Slew.
Now, the one thing with Justify that he never proved on the track was the ability for longevity, right? Very brief career, a late start to it, an early finish to it. Will his horses have longevity on the racetrack? We are yet to find out. But the brilliance is obviously being passed down, right? The genes he had that made him as good as he is have been passed down. Will the durability issue become a factor down the line? That's what we will wait and see. But horses like City of Troy are not going to have to worry about the durability factor. He's not running past his 3-year-old year, probably. If he is as good as he looks at 2 next year at 3, he's probably going to have a 4 or 5 start campaign next year as a 3-year-old. But what a fabulous prospect.
I will say this about Justify because I was around him quite a bit. He got a late start, not because of soundness. He was just a big, growthy colt, and they didn't really want to push him, and that was fine. And Bob Baffert told me the day he was retired, he said they wanted to retire him because he's a Triple Crown winner. Trust me, this horse would have come back better than ever. He wasn't bad at all. I could have run him in the fall. I could have run him as a 4-year-old. It was not something that was going to be career changing. So I'm not going to be worried about that. And so far, we've seen him. The ones that have been running, and they've kept going. And being by Scat Daddy, even though Justify himself never had a chance to run on grass, Scat Daddy was a prolific turf stallion.
Better turf,
exactly. So the breeders, I mean, now, and the other thing about Seattle Slew, as great as he was, the Euros weren't crazy about him because he was not really known as a grass stallion. I mean, he got some that could run, but they weren't head over heels with him buying them as yearlings. But now that City of Troy's come around, not only are the Europeans going to be buying them, the Americans, the Japanese. I mean, you won't be able to buy one. I mean, I know I won't be able to buy one, that's for sure. So I think the future is, he's got a chance to be in bloodlines for the next 100 years, seriously. As Seattle Slew, of course, traces to Tappet, now to Flightline. He's held on for 50 years. Whereas you won't find anything that even resembles a sire line from Secretariat or Affirmed or any of the other Triple Crown winners that we know of. And even American Apparel does not look like he's on that path.
Right. Good point. Very good point. Do we have the next Franco? We'll find out. Franco 4 for 4 as a 2-year-old, winning the Dewhurst at the end of his campaign. 3 for 3 for City of Troy, ending in that same race in England. Let's go to our third topic this week as we start to think about the Breeders' Cup in a bit, but the news of the week kind of supersedes that a little bit with jockey Frankie Tori announcing that his retirement plans are being retired. He's not going to call it quits. He had so many swan songs, the rocking chair tour, if you will, around the world at various race meets. But Tori announced that he's going to come back and ride Santa Anita again here in the fall meet. And Jeff Siegel, that's good news for local players who want to see Frankie Tori and fans around the world who have, marveled at his career. He had a very good season at Santa Anita last year. And it'd be good to have him back, actually.
Well, I tell you what, he was terrific last year. We need him. It's right now. It's Juan Hernandez and nobody. We need somebody to take some live mounts, and of course with Santa Anita now, carting 50% of its races on the grass. Frankie will be in demand. He rode terrific last winter when he came over here. Bob Baffert was riding him a lot. Everybody's going to be after Frankie. He didn't ride that much this year, even though he rode the entire year. He was very selective in his mounts, and I'm sure he'll be the same at Santa Anita. But he showed no signs of slippage when I saw him ride. It looked to me like he's as good as he ever was, and he was as good as he ever was this year. I was kind of wondering, why are you retiring? Unless you just fed up and want to, lay on a beach somewhere. But it's good to see that he is coming back, and it was something that was rumored throughout the year. He says, "There's no way he's going to retire. He's just too good right now."
He finished third in the standings at Santa Anita with 26 victories for the meet. So, it's not like he was just, picking up one here or there. 26 wins at the meet, third most during that classic meet, the winter spring at Santa Anita. 18% win rate, awfully good. Top 4 in earnings with 1.9 million of mount earnings. He was trying to find a Kentucky Derby mount for Baffert. That didn't quite work out for him this time around. Maybe in a final go around it will. Shades of Gary Stevens retiring and unretiring. I remember Gary Stevens retiring in 1999, and we broke the story personally on the Racing Network, which was the fledgling network at the time. We had Gary on for just a regular interview about something. I can't even remember the topic. I think it might have been Silver Charm or somebody being nominated for the Hall of Fame or coming back to the races or something like that. And next thing we know, Gary Stevens is announcing that he's done riding. And so he ended up unretiring then, coming back 2 more times. And so Frankie Tori back to do it again. Really, when you don't take a break, I don't know if it's unretiring or coming back from retirement. How do we label this? This isn't Jordan going to play for the White Sox and then coming back for the Wizards or anything.
Well, he never really retired.
Yeah.
I mean, he might have said he was retiring, but he never actually retired. And again, he is going to be the only thing about the horse player now. I mean, Frankie's not going to be riding any 12-5 claimers, okay? Right. But I think what he will be doing is really selectively either picking his mounts or riding for a small band of barns or trainers that he knows. Yeah. And it's going to be a strong handicapping factor for horse players, as it was last winter. And he's going to live here in California. I'm not saying that he won't move around if he has to take some mounts out of the state, but I think he gets to look at those mountains and the weather in the winter. There's no snow. I think he might be very happy that he decided to continue on, and I have absolutely no reason to believe that he won't be just as successful, if not more so, this year than last year.
Nobody unretires to come back at Aqueduct in the winter. I mean, that's the difference. A little Rob Gronkowski move here. He just kind of waits for Tom Brady to get the Bucks together. And he says, you know what? I think I'll come back for one more lap around. So we'll see. Maybe Frankie can get himself to the Kentucky Derby with a
that would be fun. Yeah,
spring. Certainly would be good for the game. Let's go to our fourth topic on the big board as we hit our Breeders' Cup tracker. And a lot to track is for in terms of the Classic Division workouts. Really no classic news of the past couple days, but in terms of the workouts and horses we've seen on the track, we'll take a look at those, and also a race in the turf sprint ranks last week at Keeneland that has a lot of implication. Let's go to Archangelo, the probable favorite for this year's Breeders' Cup Classic. He's been out at Santa Anita for several weeks now for trainer Jenna Antonucci, and he was going through a serious workout here on the 15th of October a few days ago. Jeff, this was on Sunday. What do you make of it?
Oh, I love the work. He went a minute. He galloped out full of run. He galloped all the way around to the 3/4 pole. Never took a deep breath. I mean, he's being asked a little bit here at the end because that's what you need to do. I mean, we're talking about a horse that hasn't been out now for a while, and you got a 1.25 mile race coming up in a couple of weeks, 3 weeks. So they needed to do something with him a little bit, and I wanted to see by himself how he would respond. And he's going to go out to the 7/8 pole. He's going to continue out with plenty of energy, which is what I like to see, to the 3/4 pole. He's still got another serious work next week, and then maybe they'll shorten him up a little bit and get him sharp. I thought that was just what I wanted to see. And as a developing 3-year-old who is almost 4 now, and I don't think that's going to be an issue with the age anymore. It might be early in the late summer or early summer, but now I think he's fine. And every race he seems to run, he seems to get better and faster, and we know the distance is no problem. Looks like he's getting over the track just fine. I mean, there's no knocks on him. I think he's fine.
No. And as you mentioned with the schedule, right? This is the 15th weekend that we just saw that workout. This coming weekend would be the 22nd. The following weekend would be the 29th. The 29th kind of hits you on Breeders' Cup week. So that's just a maintenance work at that point, right? Or a little sharpener.
Just a half mile.
The big work for all of these Breeders' Cup horses comes this Saturday and Sunday. The 22nd, 23rd are going to be the ones that you really want to follow. We will have all those workouts for you with XBTV and gather them around the country where we can get video on these horses, and they'll be part of our First Bet and Express Bet wager guide for the Breeders' Cup. That will be ready for release on the 25th of October. So that'll give you handicapping insight from all of our different handicappers across the 14 divisions of the Breeders' Cup this year, stats and trends from past races, artificial intelligence information, workouts, all the stuff that you need to play the Breeders' Cup with confidence. We'll have it for you in the First and Express Bet Breeders' Cup wager guide, available in our early edition on October 25th, a week from Wednesday. Then the final version will be ready on Halloween Tuesday, the 31st, the day after entries are taken on Monday for Breeders' Cup week. More workouts
for you. I got a question for you, though, Jeremy. Before we start, I got a question for you. There's so much information in that guide. Yeah. How much is it going to cost?
Nothing. Absolutely free. How's that? It cost me a lot of hours. I'll tell you that. And
yeah, but
I guess it cost the people I build some money, but it will not cost the viewer or the consumer a single dime. Free. And you know what? This is our 20th anniversary of the wager guide with Express Bet and First Bet. It began in 2004, an idea of Johnny DeSantis, who got that rolling back in the early days with Express Bet. I came aboard in 2005. I was just going back and looking through some files today. I was like, which guide did I start with? And the first thing I could find was 2005. So I was involved in the second one. So this is my 19th wager guide for First Bet and Express Bet, and the 20th overall. And no charge for any of them over the course of the 20 years. It's been some pretty good value. Even back in those days, we had some good picks. I think I'm trying to remember the original classic. Randy Moss was handicapping there in 2005 on the guide that I found. Bob Newmeyer was in the guide. Kate and Bradar, Steve Bick over the years. We've had a lot of different folks in the guide during the course of time. Dick Girardi, a longtime member of the guide. This year, we're going to have a great team. We've got Zoe, Michelle, and Millie out at Santa Anita. We've got Jeff and John White, myself, Eddie Olczyk, a cast of thousands going to take part, plus our handicappers around the various racetracks from the First family. So a lot going and a lot cooking towards that Breeders' Cup wager guide. And a big part of it, again, are these XBTV workouts that are so important. Let's go back to the track at Santa Anita where White Aario, the Whitney winner, Jeff, as we continue our Breeders' Cup tracker, was in action for Rick Dutrow on the 16th. That was on Monday. Let's take a look at the Whitney winner here coming for home.
Well, he's going to go 5/8 in the 1-1-4, which is about 9 lengths slower than what we saw the favorite go. I think that, Archangelo, and this is fine. I mean, I don't think Dutrow is the kind of trainer. I'm not that familiar with the way he works his horses, but I don't think he's the kind of trainer that asks his horses for much in the morning. And you can see him. The main thing is he's traveling well. He's going easily. He appears to be happy. And workouts, to me, I've always felt the least important thing about a workout is the time, because it's not a race. Horses will go as slow or as fast as you want them to go. And White Aario was given the impression by his rider early on, I don't want you to go in 58. I want you to go back 101, 102. And of course, okay, that's what you want to do. That's what I'll do. I'll do what you tell me to do. And he did exactly that. So if you trust Dutrow to have this horse in peak form on Breeders' Cup a day, and why wouldn't you? This is the plan. This is the method by which he believes will do this colt his best.
Not a lot of gallop out there. They pulled him up pretty early on the turn.
Again, by design, though.
Yeah,
right.
So, this is a horse who was really good at a mile, right? In the Met Mile earlier this year. He was really good in the Whitney on a kind of fast kind of race and fast kind of track that we're used to seeing against some other miler types. He's got to get the 1.25 miles. I'd like to see a little more gallop out in that work and try to really get the air in him next time out. But again, I'm not trading the horse. I'm just handicapping, and the trainer knows the horse better, but the horse also could be better at a mile or a 1.125 or a 1.16 So we've got to see. The 1.25 miles is the big question with White Aario, right? We know he's in his best form of his career.
And I don't think, what you said was true about the gallop out, but I don't think a strong gallop out would necessarily allow White Aario to be comfortable at 1.25 miles, because I don't think he will be. And that's a whole different handicapping analysis. I'm talking about bringing up to the race as best as he can. Right. And then if he can't get 1.25 miles, I don't think at this stage of the game it's going to and I think he's either going to get it or not. Yeah. But on the other hand, I think he's going to run his race, but his race might be 1.125 miles. That's and that's where Archangelo, I don't think we have any worries about that at all.
No,
we know that.
Yeah. Now, one horse that the closer we get to the Breeders' Cup, the more I'm becoming interested in him, because the Classic division hasn't just produced a Hulk, right? We just do not have that star. Archangelo as the 3-year-old looks like the player in here. You get back and you start to just whittle this down to what we've seen before. It's Bob Baffert in the Classic division at home with the Pacific Classic winner. What the heck's wrong with Arabian Night winning this thing?
Nothing. Not a thing, He's training really well. Bob Baffert trains his horses way differently than the Eastern guys. Right. 124 flat. It's one thing to work 124 flat while you're in company, breaking off behind another horse, ridden out and doing your best. Are you telling me this colt is doing his best? This looks like a 129 or something. How much better can you look than Arabian Night did by himself, traveling out strongly and going fast? Do you think coming off that Pacific Classic win, which he proved he could go 1.25 miles against older horses, do you think Arabian Night is a serious contender? I do. Yeah.
And this is gallop out. You've got the whole 9 yards here. And this is essentially a 2-turn work because he's working so well around the second turn here at 7/8 of a mile. This is kind of like what I want to see when a horse is going to go 1.25 miles. I know everybody trains different. And Rick Duttrow's won the Breeders' Cup Classic, right? So we're not comparing, some 2-punch Andy from the backstretch somewhere against, the Hall of Famers. He's won it with St. Liam. He's had elite horses like Big Brown. So he knows how to win 1.25 mile races. I just liked what I saw there from Arabian Night a lot. And if Baffert can win the Classic with Bayern and Authentic and horses like that, there's no reason he can't win in what is a down year with the older horses, unquestionably down year with the older horses. There's no reason why Arabian Night can't be a serious player here. And I have not been on the Arabian Night bandwagon or fandom at all this year, but he's just growing on me as we get closer and closer to the race. He seems to me the biggest threat to Archangelo.
I totally 100% agree. I don't know if I'm ready to switch yet, but I can tell you that from what I've seen of Arabian Night, what you see on Breeders' Cup Classic Day may be an entirely different type of colt than we've ever seen. And that includes his win in the Pacific Classic. Yeah. And I hate to judge that based on just workouts, because a lot of horses will work great and then run like they're supposed to on the form. But this is a developing colt. And I'm looking at him as being a colt that is really never quite fulfilled his potential yet. But man, I'm telling you, what I'm seeing here is different colt than I've ever seen. So we'll see.
All right. Also in our Breeders' Cup tracker for the week, we talked about these classic workers. We told you there was turf sprint news last week. The defending champ in the turf sprint, no less, Caravel was back in action in the Franklin Stakes at Keeneland. It would be on a 3-week turnaround to that race to the Breeders' Cup Sprint. You say that seems tight? She did it last year. She won both of them last year. In her title defense, though, she wasn't as sharp at Keeneland. Let's go back where Tony Ann pulled the upset.
Caravel, who's third by 3. Baystorm is in fourth. Tony Ann is fifth. BG Warrior, Twilight Gleaming going at it for the lead. Here's Caravel. Here's Tony Ann on her outside. Twilight Gleaming, Caravel, Tony Ann, trained to Artemis, running late down the center of the course. Here's Tony Ann challenging Twilight Gleaming. Caravel is there. And trained to Artemis still fourth. Tony Ann trying to get ahead in front from Caravel. Tony Ann wins the Franklin Stakes for Flavian Pratt.
Just outfinished to the wire in there. Good gallop out on the even terms with the winner, Tony Ann. So, if you want to unpack this and say that Brad Cox knows what he has in Caravel, right? And this was almost like an elimination in harness. Run in the top 4 and get to the final heat, right? If they were giving this race away, you can keep your confidence. But I don't know, Jeff. In this day and age, when you've got a Breeders' Cup champion in a race where it's set up beautifully for her, we handicapped this race on our Friday show. She sat the exact trip you predicted in this race that she doesn't need the lead. Just sit third, let those other ones go, chirp for home, and go get them. And she didn't because she got out-kicked. It's not like she didn't catch the front runner. She got out-kicked by Tony Ann.
That's right. And Brad Cox is still coming with her. It's probably going to be her. I'm sure it's going to be her last race. She's now 6 years of age, and maybe he can, in his own mind, justify the chance because she is a defending champion. It's going to be a different, much firmer course, I think, at Santa Anita than she saw at Keeneland. Even though she loved Keeneland before, I don't know why she wouldn't have loved it again. But I don't think Caravel is quite the same mare that she was. If she was, she's never going to lose any race to Tony Ann, who we know out here in California being a very nice allowance type of mare. But never in 9 previous starts had she ever earned a buyer number higher than 91. They all also, if you notice that race, Jeremy, they all kind of finished in a heap there. It wasn't like these two drew off. If someone asked me, could Caravel bounce back and win and defend her title and win the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint, I wouldn't say no chance, but I would say maybe, but I'm not going to gamble on her. If you want to, go ahead,
What was she last year? 30, 40 to 1, right? She was 40 something to 1 last year in the Breeders' Cup Sprint when she won.
42 to 1.
42 to 1. So it's not like she went in there as a 4 to 1 proposition and she's defending champ. It was a surprise that she won last year, and she's held pretty good form since then, but has tailed off in her last couple. So she is absolutely positively belongs back in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. She absolutely belongs there. But if you want to bet her at something way shorter than the 40 to 1 she was last year, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. You're going to deserve the price, at least 25 to 1. You're not going to get, you're not going to get 40 to 1 on the defending champion. You're not going to get 25 to 1 on the defending champion. She'll get bet back. But to me, fair odds on her is about 25 to 1 to defend that title. And that's where it would start. And I don't think you're going to get that. So as a handicapper, I'm off board, right? She didn't do enough for me to take a much shorter price this time around. Based on what I've seen lately, and especially in this last race at Keeneland. So good luck to Caravel. She's had a great career. She absolutely Pennsylvania bred. I love that. She deserves every bit of the trip to Santa Anita to take that shot again. But as a gambler, I'm going to look for somebody else when we get out there for the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. Let's go to our 5th and final topic, our stars of tomorrow, as it is for more than a year straight now. We always finish the show on an upbeat note, looking for a horse coming off an impressive debut, second, third start in the maiden ranks. And we've got a second verse, same as the first here, because Dornock, a full brother to Kentucky Derby winner Mage, looked awfully good at Keeneland over the weekend.
8 lengths from the lead, and this is the short stretch. Here's Latlong coming after Dornock. Django is still 7 lengths off the leader, and Dornock is the leader in the final furlong. Dornock by 5, by 6. Back to Latlong, and then Django. It is Dornock and Luis Saez, and Dornock wins it. Django. Keeneland 7th race upcoming. The turf is listed.
And look, Dornock's performance there has to have Danny Gargan excited and the connections with this full brother to Mage. But there's a lot of room for improvement there, Jeff, green as they can be.
Yeah, it can't do anything more wrong in winning than Dornock did, which is actually a good thing because it gives Danny something to work with. You can say if you can win like that, the margins were 6.5, 1, 9 3/4, 8 1/4. I mean, that's what you want to see, right?
Right.
But he hung on his left lead. He never changed over. Looking around, Jock tried to get him to change over. He never did. Eventually, hopefully, he's going to learn and be more professional. But when he does, if he does, can you imagine how much more improvement he's got? Right. This was just his third start. He was actually stakes placed in his last start at Monmouth behind a colt that got beat a nose in a stake at Keeneland. So that was a live race. Distance to ground, he's already proven he can do that. His brother was pretty decent. He won the Derby. I mean, there's so much upside for the colt like this. And if he ever gets his mind straightened out and figures out what he's supposed to do, who knows how good he can be. He looks like he'll run forever. And again, by good magic out of that really good producing mare Puka by Big Brown. So there's a classic on classic. And I think the future is very bright. I hope they don't try to make him do something that he's not mentally ready yet to do. Give him time to develop and mature and work with him a little bit. The future for him is in 6 months, not necessarily now. And I think Dornock's got a chance to be really, really good if he starts to figure things out.
Gargan in the winter splits his stable between New York and Gulfstream Park. You could certainly see this horse on the Florida Derby Trail like Mage last year. It would make a lot of sense down there. Maybe we'll have both of them in the stable area at Gulfstream Park this winter. Mage as a 4-year-old, maybe a Pegasus World Cup hopeful, and maybe we'll see this one. The interesting thing on money in terms of Dornock is this horse brought $325,000 as a yearling. That's before they knew he was fooled to a Kentucky Derby winner. So they got a bargain in that case. And he actually cost about $90,000 more than what they paid for Mage as a yearling. And then Mage resold as a 2-year-old. And as a 2-year-old, Mage still didn't sell for as much as this horse did. So the value here is really good. And there could be some down the line stud potential here too, based on the pedigree. And there's a lot to like with Dornock in here, just beyond the racetrack.
And not only that, but no one knew who Good Magic was either at the time. Since this colt was bought, Good Magic took off and made his mark. So, exciting prospect. We will keep close tabs.
All right, let's get a bonus topic in this week. We got about 7-8 minutes here towards our normal time that we give on the podcast, but nobody's holding us to the clock, so we can go as long as we want. Bonus topic this week in the news as was it Garrett Wilson? Who was the guy on Saturday Night Live who used to say in the news today? Garrett something. I can't think of his name. Garrett Morris. That's it. Yeah. So in the news today, they were talking about Canterbury Park going to a full timing system starting with their 2024 season, Jeff, whereas the races will be timed from the moment the gate opens through the wire. Now, currently, the way races have been timed, and I say currently as in like the last 150 years in the United States, races are timed basically from where they hit the pole where the race is supposed to start until the finish line. So there's something called run-up, and that's the distance between the starting gate where it's placed and the pole where the race is started at the time. That run-up can vary greatly at various racetracks, and so we don't always get the most accurate of times or the most accurate of distances in horse racing. We just kind of lived with it for a century plus. Is that about to change?
Yeah, I mean, that's good. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think quarter horse racing has always started at the pole. So it's not something that's
from the gate when the gate pops.
From the gate, right? Yeah. So those times are accurate. Of course, you have wind and everything else that you have to figure out, and of course, some tracks are deeper than others. But what bothers me about this, that doesn't bother me. I think it's a great idea, but is when tracks started adjusting the run up to the same distance on the same day. One race is a 50-yard run up and the next one is our 50 feet and the next 100, same distance. It kind of makes it hard. Now they do print the run up, but even if they do that, how much faster is a horse that first quarter going to be if it's 100 foot run up as opposed to a 50? I don't know. I mean, maybe there's a way of measuring it. But anyway, the bottom line is this, that they're trying to do something to help the handicapper, which I'm all for. And if you have races on the dirt, you probably can get away with this without impacting the track. You can't do this on grass because you don't want that gate on the same strip of grass every day. Otherwise, you get
Right.
a indentation. So that I understand might not work, okay? But with dirt, there's really no excuse to do it. Now, some tracks do it because they want to have a longer run up to the clubhouse. For example, Santa Anita has a rather significant run up between the start of a mile race and the breaking of the beam at the wire than at mile and 1/16 and mile and 1/8 distances. Because they want to give the horses from the outside a better chance of getting over and not getting packed out. I get that.
Yeah.
My solution to that is then just don't run a mile race. Make them all mile 1/16.
Right.
Because the miles are basically mile and 16th anyway. What's the difference, right?
Yeah.
So I can see that. But I don't understand why the run up to the 6 furlong, to the 6.5, and the 7 are completely different. I don't get it. I think it's 28 feet to 7 furlong races at Santa Anita. I think that's 60 feet for the 6 furlong. Why? What's the difference? So
Well,
I mean,
let me give a little visual here for our viewers. These are both 6 furlong races. 6 furlongs. The red poles are your quarter-mile poles. So the right-hand side, the larger one on Breeders' Cup Day at Churchill. This is the 6 furlong start. You can see that gate is significantly behind. They all actually, people say it's more like 6 1/4 furlongs at Churchill Downs. So that's a significant run up to that pole. On the left, you're going to see a Preakness Day stakes race at Pimlico, where they start on top of the pole. That's just a couple feet. I mean, they are right there on top of it. Again, both of these races are 6 furlongs. Both will be timed from the pole to the wire, but there's no way that those horses can get the kind of acceleration, especially in the first quarter mile in a Pimlico 6 furlong race, that they do at Churchill. So you're going to see the first quarter mile splits definitely be a big time difference. And of course, the overall time will be impacted too, because you just didn't have the running start, right? You would always run faster with a running start than you do basically from a standing start.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's dramatic too. I mean, again, the difference between, like, for example, Golden Gate Fields, who we won't have to worry about or deal with anymore after next summer, but their 5.5 furlong run-ups are like 90 feet, and the 6 furlongs are considerably shorter. So when you compare the opening quarter miles in the 5.5 furlong races to 6 at the same track, the 5.5s are always massively faster. And you can get fooled if you're not sharp enough to know this.
Right.
You might think that some horse that goes in 21-1 at Golden Gate going 5.5 will be 5 lengths in front going 3/4 against same horse. It's not. That doesn't happen that way. But Canterbury's trying to make it simple, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I hope that it works, and I hope that more tracks see fit to do this, because it's just going to help the handicapper, and the handicapper needs all the help he can get.
There will be an adjustment period because times are not going to be what you're used to seeing. They're going to be slower. I mean, you're timing it from a standstill.
Yeah.
So there's going to be an adjustment period. The figure makers will adjust. The figure makers have been going back in replays and trying to retime stuff off the replays. I think they're a big part of the impetus behind this, because it's going to lessen their workload of having to go back and retime everything from gates. So there is some financial and personal interest in trying to get something like this done. Otherwise, it's been just rather kind of handshake and nod and accepted, amongst sports players. And you just kind of know, okay, the 6 furlong races at Churchill are a little faster than they are other places because of that. But again, is that insider knowledge? No, people know, and the run-ups are published in the past performances, or in the charts and things. It's more work to understand it all. And if we're going to make the game less work for people, that's good to the broad picture. And then to the individual who's kind of already known these sort of things, it's a little bit of a kind of a no big deal. You say, what's the difference? It's 2/5 of a second here or there, and there are points in handicapping where people say 2/5 of a second, big deal. And then there's other times people say that's the entire deal, right? And when you're talking speed and figures, that's kind of the entire deal. But you could have those same people in a conversation and tell you that weight means nothing. Yet we have centuries of physics that tell us the more weight that you have on something, the slower it will accelerate and go. But nobody wants to quantify how many fifths of a second these pounds equal. Nobody wants to quantify how much a jockey's worth. You can't tell me that Angel Cordero wasn't worth 2/5 of a second off over some 3% jockey in New York in the heyday, right? So 2/5 of a second here or there, but everybody will tell you jockeys don't matter, weights don't matter. But this is critical. This is absolutely critical that we do this. So I think it's self-interest where you have an interest, right? If you're a big speed figure and a big time person, this is a big deal. But I'm going to circle back to something we talked about earlier on this show. Is the next Frankel City of Troy? So I read in an article that the Dewhurst by Frankel back in 2010 was running 125.73. All right, that's the final time. How many articles did it take me to even find the time for City of Troy's race this past weekend?
I know where to find it, but I'll ask you. I don't probably
Eight.
a few.
It took me 8 Google searches, like
Right.
going down through. It was the 8th entry before I found any article that even mentioned the time. So time is relevant if it's relevant to you, right? In England, they could care nothing about the time, and we know the track was slow over the past weekend. But in fact, if you want to say time is important, then about 4/5 of a second faster was City of Troy than Frankel. And they said that this track was almost 2 seconds slow in the Dewhurst. But that just kind of goes to show certain parts of the world, times and splits and fractions and sectionals, whatever you want to call them, mean the world to people. And in other places, they don't mean as much. And it's the same in American handicapping. You could talk to a speed figure person till you're blue in the face about the pedigree of a horse, and they're going to look at you like you're from Mars, like it doesn't matter. And then you talk to a pedigree person and talk about 1/5 of a second here or there on a run up, and they're going to look at you like you're blue in the face. So that's the beautiful thing about handicapping. Everybody's got something they can embrace. So if they want to fix the way races are timed and make them more accurate, that could be absolutely great for some people, and I'm all for it. But it could also be totally irrelevant to other people and not affect their handicapping in a single bit.
Well, it would help. It would affect mine a little bit, but I'm more of a visual guy anyway. But anyway, we'll see. We'll see if Canterbury is successful, and maybe others will follow suit. So you mentioned last week about the Jim McKay and the Maryland Million, the first that they had, and everybody followed suit on that. It took them a while. So if it's good, other tracks will, if they can, will adapt to it. And I'm kind of think it'd be a good idea myself.
Hey, we have seen some of the small tracks make innovations in horse racing that change the big tracks, from the colored saddle towels, Sam Houston with some of their wagers that got picked up nationally, the 10-cent superfecta specifically. Sam Houston was the first to go to the fractional wagers. Beulah Park and the Ohio circuit was the first to go to jackpot wagers. And then they got picked up nationally. Sometimes this stuff gets through the test kitchen, if you will, at the lower levels in racing, and it picks up. So just because it's Canterbury Park and you don't handicap Canterbury, it may not be a story for you today or when Canterbury starts running back again next April, May, but it could be at a track near you soon because we see this come through the smaller racetracks throughout time and sometimes catch on. So we will see. Will we have timed from the starting gate in thoroughbred racing throughout thoroughbred racing here in North America in the near future? I guess we're going to find out soon enough. That's going to wrap up our 5 topics on the big board this week. They are now official because Jeff Siegel said so. Where to now, Maj? After the QE2, this brilliant 3-year-old filly from England should be headed towards the Breeders' Cup Mile, in our opinion. The next Frankel, we compared and contrasted City of Troy, fabulous Dewhurst winner, to his predecessor 13 years ago. The sky is the limit for City of Troy next year as a sophomore for the Coolmore clan. Frankie Tori said, I'm not retiring just yet. He's coming back for Santa Anita in the fall, Jeff, or in the winter meet, I should say, the classic season starting December 26th. Looking forward to that under the San Gabriels. The Breeders' Cup tracker took a look at workouts from Archangelo, the Whitney winner, White Aario, and the Pacific Classic winner, Arabian Night at Santa Anita, courtesy of XBTV. And we discussed the repeat chances of Caravel after her defeat in the Franklin Stakes at Keeneland, as she looks forward to a back-to-back bid in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. And finally, the star of the future was Door Knock. Knock on the Door, the full brother of Mage, looking good at Keeneland last week. All right, Jeff, that's a wrap up. When we come back next week on Tuesday, we're going to be a day away from the launch of the Breeders' Cup Wager Guide for First and Express Bet. The pre-entries will have been submitted for the Breeders' Cup by this time next week. They won't be announced to the public until the following day on Wednesday, the 25th. So it is going to be a big, big news week when we return here next week.
Well, just like the NFL schedule when they release it in the spring, you won't know it for sure, but things will leak, I'm sure.
Yes. Yeah, we'll have some information probably to pass along next week on that front. We're going to look at some huge workouts. We talked about earlier in this show that the key workouts for all these Breeders' Cup horses, no matter what venue they're at, is that next to last work, right? The last one will be a maintenance move just to get you to the race. The last serious drill will be that next to last work. And where the calendar hits, that's going to be this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for the vast majority of these Breeders' Cup contenders. So it is a huge workout weekend. XBTV will have as much of it covered as they can get cameras on it, and we'll take a look at those works next week. Between now and then, Jeff and I will return on Friday for our first call podcast. We've got Oklahoma Classics at Remington Park on Friday night this week. We've got stakes action in the Raven Run at Keeneland. We've got some big harness racing this weekend. So we've got a lot to preview coming up this Friday, Jeff, and get our handicapping shoes back on for a big live day at Santa Anita as well.
Yeah, so we will talk to you again on Friday, and then next week we will really get down and dirty with the workouts.
On behalf of everybody with First Technologies and my partner, Jeff Siegel, I'm Jeremy Plonk. Have a great week. We'll talk to you Friday.